So, Waifu released a video about how Elden Ring ruined Souls PvP, and yeah, let's just watch it, shall we?
While I was recording for my Backhand Blaze video, I ran into a squad of 3 players who were about to enter the Meteor Mother of Fingers boss fight. Right after the invasion begins, I get run down by one guy while the other 2 are coming just a bit further back. Thinking I'm gonna be jumped by all of them, I pull out Weights of Darkness to try and deal as much AoE damage as possible, but it turns out the other 2 guys are mages and could not give 2 shits about proximity. I need to gain as much distance from the mages as I can in order to simply not die by default.
Jesus.
More spells such as Dragon Breath are thrown in my direction, and all I can do is simply run for my life and put as much room between me and the mages as possible, while one of the guys applies melee pressure on me. During the whole ordeal...
Melee pressure, by the way, with Moonveil. That's your melee pressure in Elden Ring. A weapon that can hit you from the distance of like 4 freaking pikes. Maybe longer, actually, honestly.
You can also see me going through my menu a bunch of times to try and find the best choice to deal with this chaotic scenario, until I finally decide on taking Rakshasa's Great Katana and hope for the best. I managed to land 1 hit on a guy, but of course I can't follow through because... magia, XD, and I'm forced to retreat to a spot where these spells can't get to me. One guy follows me behind the spot and tries to attack me with his spell point blank. I notice his severe lack of judgment, and I take this opportunity of segregation in order to dispose of him before the others can get to me. Hermoso, un poco menos. It may not seem as much, but fighting 2 players instead of 3 is a million times easier. And after a very nice Bomba Kobe moment and some little maneuvering, I get the second mage.
That's fucking damage, 1300.
I try to use the backhand blades, but they get severely countered by barricade shields, so I simply switch to bolas and get the job done. As you can see, this was supposed to be a backhand blades invasion, but doing this invasion with backhand blades would have been maybe not impossible, but certainly extremely difficult. And I needed to change my equipment several times in order to adapt to the different situations. And these 2 guys just shooting spells at me with no thought behind it were an extreme danger to me. Not only that, but I also consume much more resources that are commonly not available in vanilla Elden Ring. Keep in mind that this is seamless co-op, where invaders have access to a larger amount of healing potions and great runes. Co-op phantoms also have access to that, but you get the point. And once again, I don't really want you to misunderstand me here. I don't mind doing all these things, and I'm used to having to do a lot of magic in order to win invasions, but I'm just asking myself, why does it have to be so unnecessarily difficult? If it's already this difficult for a veteran, yes, I know it's fucking cringe, but I'm calling myself like this so you guys can get the point. What is it gonna be like for a new player? You know, someone who wants to try invasions. When you play PvE in Elden Ring, you start from the very bottom. They throw you into weak, simple enemies for you to learn the basics and mechanics, as well as getting a feeling of combat and how you are supposed to face the challenges that the game imposes on you. You even get some tutorial messages explaining to you in plain English how some things work and what are the best options to deal with enemies. For instance, this stance break tip, which is one of the most important ones in the game. In PvP though, it's pretty much... yeah, you can do this. Good luck. The game doesn't even explain to you how the matchmaking system works, you know, the thing that you need to know so you can know who you are invading, let alone that some items don't have the same benefits in PvP than in PvE. Like, for instance, the Dragon Crest Great Shield will give you 20% extra physical defense in PvE, but in PvP it's balls, and it only protects you for 5%. So, whereas using it in PvE will be a great idea, using it in PvP could be accounted for a waste of a talisman slot. Same thing happens with another PvE favorite, the Fire Scorpion Talisman, or any other Scorpion Talismans for that matter. They give you more benefits in PvE than debuffs, but in PvP it's the opposite, and you get more debuffs than benefits. They are not worth using in PvP, and nobody tells you this. You are just thrown into some random player's world, and the next thing you know is that you have a moonveil up your ass, and 3 dudes are teabagging your rotting corpse. And this is something that you may have experienced when when trying to do Barra's questline before the patch, as you had to invade 3 people in order to progress. You didn't need to win or anything, you just had to invade people, but some people complained that they couldn't get any invasions, and that's understandable when they don't fucking know the matchmaking rules to the fucking game. And after some time they just launched a patch where you can just complete it offline. And this clearly tells me how much Miyazaki thinks of PvP. You know, I think it was clearly patched for people who don't have online, but just let me wear my tinfoil hat in.
I mean, this is a tinfoil hat moment. From Software doing that, like, since I only remember, yeah? It's From Software allows you to play the game solo. You always have the alternative.
Instead of further expanding on this mechanic with the help of Barra's questline to, you know, help newer players get into invading at a comforting pace, FromSoft just abandoned it altogether and left players to fend off for themselves in any way they could. And don't get me wrong, invasions have always been like this, you know? Players always had to make do and find the ins and outs on their own. But when talking about Elden Ring, not only is the game not helpful for getting into invasions, I believe it actively discourages you from invading. Maybe not with a tutorial text that kindly tells you to fuck off every time you try to use the red finger, but by making invasions nearly impossible to win for the average Souls newcomer, or dare I say, the average Souls fan. No es ningún secreto en este punto de la vida de género que los juegos Souls se volvieron mucho más mainstream de lo que eran. Elden Ring sales already speak volumes of it, but FromSoft was clearly prepared for it, as they made sure to give invaded players as many advantages as possible.
I like money.
As invasions seem to run on the assumptions that the invaded players have marginal to no skill, and the invader is an unmatched PvP god. But PvP god or not, trust me when I tell you that fighting multiple players in Elden Ring can be way harder than fighting any of the game's bosses. And the only reason content creators such as myself, Steelovsky, G9, or even Chase the Bro can consistently win invasions is because the skill gap between us
Or even Chase the Bro. Do I hear small mockery here? Is only wife doubts the god himself?
us and the invaded players is so high that we managed to pull through. And even then, it can become super difficult. Seriously, try testing it out by yourself. Tell 2 PvP players to summon you to their world via a red sign and try defeating them both at the same time. If they are competent players and know what they're doing, I guarantee you will not be able to beat them. It doesn't matter how much you try. Numbers advantage in PvP can overshadow skill, builds, and any other trick or tools you may have up your sleeve. Sure, you may win sometimes with gravity or by sheer luck, but that doesn't change the fact that multiple competent people can be literally unbeatable by the average Souls player. Even if we lower the bar and have you fighting 2 or 3 below average or outright incompetent players, the fight will still be incredibly difficult if they maintain the slightest form of aggression and a little bit of caution. And if the players you're fighting know that constant rolling will give them perma iframes on high latency, finishing one of them off while the others chase you around can be nigh impossible. And you're
Like, these games never supposed to be available to play on intercontinental ping, let's call it that way, yeah? It's really not good for any type of games. Like, this guy over here like, has 350 ms to waifu. It's fucking insane to have like that much of the ping. The game starts to shit itself even on like a 80 ms at this point, yeah? So even that little as 80 ms, 80 milliseconds, 80 ping is just enough to cause some issues with consistency of the combat, let alone like pings of 150, 200, 250 and so on. It's just way too much. And it's not only the case for the PvP dude, like, because someone could bring that argument that like the game, you know, it's only like hurts the PvP, so it is sacrifice that is okay in order to have like better activity, because more players that can potentially match with each other in the co-op. But even in the co-op, if you have like a high ping between players in the session, the PvE itself doesn't behave like it should. It is just simply laggy. And on top of that, this game wouldn't have as much of issues with connectivity to other players, in the meaning that with finding like a people that you could potentially play with, if the matchmaking formula on its own wouldn't be dog shit. And we had a perfect example of that. Like, dude, in Lords of the Fallen, the game that is not the greatest, and currently, I don't know, like, it's not really like super popular, yeah? Lords of the Fallen kind of, well, fallen into obscurity, nomen omen, yeah? Currently, 350 players on the peak on the PC. But the game has crossplay, so you can play against Xbox gamers, PlayStation gamers, and so on, yeah, when you're on the PC. On top of that, it has a matchmaking formula where your damage being scaled up or down depending on the level of the host and other stats, yeah? Because of that, the activity is through the roof, and at any moment you're ever going to jump onto Lords of the Fallen, you just queue for the invasion and you are getting that invasion within 10 seconds. The activity in the multiplayer is genuinely so much fucking better than in Elden Ring, despite Elden Ring being insanely popular. I mean, in comparison, dude, Elden Ring, only on the PC itself, has the peaks of 43,000 within the last 24 hours, and that's like a somewhat consistent, yeah? On the weekends, it's going up to like 60,000. From Software at fault with shitty matchmaking here, and these games could easily like run with like some sort of matchmaking ping restrictions, and they would be absolutely fine if matchmaking wouldn't be like it is. That being said, like there is a problem though, because like this game doesn't have regions. Alright, so I turned on Elden Ring for a second to show you something real quick. In the menus, you have that option that essentially suppose allow you to only get matched within your region. You see like a cross-region play. If you're gonna set it to no matchmaking, below it's written that allow or restrict cross-region matching. So essentially with no matchmaking, you're supposed to be matching with people only within your region. That's pretty much idea how it's supposed to work. But if we're gonna go to the SteamDB, to the packages, on the PC, you're going to notice something very interesting, yeah? There is the package for like the game itself, and there is only one additional version, which is this one, and it's Japan only. And the same goes for the DLC. So how does it work? So matchmaking regions in the beautiful game known as Elden Ring, and frankly any other Souls game ever created, these regions are distributed by the place where you bought the game from. So the region is assigned to the game copy. And on PC, because you have only in fact the non-Japanese version, which is essentially a global version, and Japanese version, it means only these two regions exist. If you bought the game in Japan, when your matchmaking settings are set to no matchmaking, it means you're gonna be only connecting to people from the only Japan versions of the game, or essentially people that bought the game in like Japanese like Steam store, or like, you got the point, yeah? Whereas everyone else is assigned the global version. So there are essentially only two regions, which is global and Japanese. And that's why, despite this setting being set to the no matchmaking, you are actually getting matched with people from, for example, China. It's a little bit better on PlayStation, because on PlayStation you have three regions, which is American, European, and Japanese. But there is a problem though. American region is for both Americas, and if you are connecting from the North America to South America, your connection gonna be terrible. And European region, well, you have Oceania gamers there, to be exact, Australians. So yeah, Australians are in the same region with Europeans for whatever reason.
That makes sense.
What? Why?
That's why Australia is in Eurovision. Because they're Europe. Hey, they were under the Queen Elizabeth, no? They're still under UK, no?
Okay, that makes so much sense. But yeah, like the issue is just From Software's like handling of the regions, basically. That's the main issue.
You'll probably be forced to reset and watch them mockingly heal from afar. Ashes of War and spells make this even more asinine to deal with, as you have previously seen on this video. And to top it off, the host will have more healing potions than you, blue summons, rune arcs, and many things that you don't have. And no, this is not some sort of gotcha moment or realization or breakthrough that we came with. It's just us wondering why. Why did they have to make it so difficult? You need to do so much, and they need to do so little. It's insane, to be honest. And once again, we're not trying to pass it as a
I just want to point out that vast majority of ways how like the game turned out, it's probably just a matter of complete accident. And I highly doubt that like someone there at From Software genuinely wanted to make like life of an invader much harder than it should normally be.
We're just wondering why. It's baffling. Can you imagine yourself coming out fresh from the PvE into invasions, applying the methods that worked really well in PvE, such as using your Bloodhound's Fang, for example, and the moment you use it, you get absolutely annihilated? And you don't even know why? And that anyone you come across with will just vaporize you because they have the numbers advantage and more healing than you, and they can have more teammates, and you're just gonna feel so overwhelmed. And the moment you finally die, they will start shitting on your corpse and teabagging. No, a new player will hate that experience. And on top of that, their runes are not gonna be in the same place they were when they started invading. It's gonna be somewhere else. Why on earth will they try to do that again? Why would they expose themselves to that? Can you see what I meant when I said that they are trying to actively discourage you from invading? It's a game mode just as valid as PvE and has been a genre-defining feature since the beginning. Why do they seem so adamant to get rid of it? As if it was the worst possible thing to ever exist. We don't know if it comes from a place of wanting to give the illusion that they are trying to maintain some sort of collective fictional moral high ground that the community has been trying to impose over invasions over the course of the years, or if it's just due to technical and practical issues regarding the network and gameplay. But from a developer standpoint, invaders are nearly treated as garbage. They have no incentive whatsoever to invade or participate in invasions. There are no covenants, no rewards, and like we mentioned, no help from the game to get into it.
I actually want to go over this. A lot of these things that are listed here are just coming from like a certain initial ideas about what Elden Ring exactly supposed to be. No covenants is a matter of simplification of the covenants. Michael Zaki in the interview before the release of Elden Ring was speaking of it, and they just wanted to simplify covenants. It's not like there is no covenants in Elden Ring or like no factions. There is actually shit tons of them. It's just that you can join them all. And even when you are invading, you are technically invading on the behalf of two different factions. It's either the guys from like from the Volcano Manor or like the guys from Mog, yeah? Like, this is basically like how it works. Like, as no significant rewards, technically the reward that you are getting for winning an invasion, which is a rune arc, is actually very significant. I would say that it's more annoying on the side of the host, where there is legitimately no significant reward at all. You are not getting a rune arc for killing an invader. You are actually getting that item that you can craft at any moment to essentially enable multiplayer. It's ridiculous, yeah? Waifu says that like the reward is dog shit, yeah? Because we invaders are not going to use that rune arc. But if you would be going through the game normally, kept on invading from time to time, these rune arcs will be actually very valuable, because in the game itself there is no like a decent way to collect these rune arcs besides like a regular on the ground loot, yeah?
The thing that feels like them hack-tuaing in our face is the fact that both items used for invasions have no distinctive features whatsoever. Both the Bloody Finger and the Recusant Finger do the exact same thing. So why have two of them in the first place?
Ah, they have different music. Oh.
Rune arc are all over the They are worthless.
Rune arc are all over the PvE, they are worthless? Let me actually see. I don't think that's the case. Elden Ring, rune arc. Okay, that's a lot of locations. We can buy 3, 8, 11, 14, 17 of them. In the Shadow of the Earth tree, like, we can buy another 3, which is like 20. And here, like, we probably have... There is 52 entries. Okay, like, there is a lot of rune arcs, but frankly, just getting them through the PvP is technically the easiest way to get them, methinks, consistently, to farm them consistently, if you can consistently win invasions. If you can do that, it's a completely different story. But I would say that, like, for example, when I was going through the game, I was getting a lot of rune arcs through the PvP, and these rune arcs were helping me with the PvE.
Are they just residual shit that was just left behind when they removed covenants? Is this Miyazaki's way of saying, this is how little we care about you? Fuck you? No, I don't think so. Not really. That will be the fact that blue hunters have no lore or purpose. If I were to ask you right now,
Wait, what are blue hunters? I just realized. I never thought of it.
what do blue hunters exactly do in the War of the Lands Between? Would you know what to tell me? There is literally nothing for you to say. They have no fucking lore. They just...
I actually never realized.
Because the host needs more help? And speaking of help, do they need more help though? In order to get a blue in your world, you need to be invaded. And in order to get invaded, you need to either summon another player or use the Taunter's Tongue, which is an item that allows you to be invaded when you are alone. In neither of these instances does the host need any help, because they either A, already have help with their summon, or B, don't want any help because they willingly invited invaders into their world for whatever reason. The only reason blue hunters exist is for the host to gank the invader with numbers advantage, which is fine by me, like, bring them on. But if you ask me, I don't think that new players that are just getting into invasions will appreciate getting cockblocked by blues every invasion. And the worst part is that we haven't even factored gank squads into the equation, you know? 3 people who sit in a place with no mobs waiting for one invader just to grief them. Like, imagine if a new player runs into them as...
Just in case, this footage that we are seeing right here, I have been fighting this gang squad, not 1 hour, not 2 hours, not 3 hours, not 4 hours. I have been fighting them 2 days. I got them at the end, but yeah, I fought them literally 2 days.
Patient experience. Oh boy. Y ya me imagino que algunos infradotados mononeuronales en el chat van a poner cosas tipo, ay, pero ellos se están invadiendo, se lo están ganando, es culpa de ellos por arruinar la diversión de los demás. ¿Por qué no te vas a lavar el orto un poco, pelotudo? O sea, si para vos invadir a alguien que voluntariamente se expuso a invasiones porque invocó a alguien más y están participando en un modo de juego que es parte de la experiencia en general, ¿sería arruinarles la diversión? Por favor, volvé a comentar cuando se te desarrolle por completo el lóbulo frontal. Bobo. And there are...
Okay, that's actually true that reds overall are there to enrich your experience. And I'm glad these games going with this way of equalizing the gameplay when you are playing with a friend through the game, because like I'm playing with my girlfriend some Elden Ring, like with randomizer, but overall like the rules stand. We are just bullying everything on our way, because playing in co-op just gives you an opportunity to continuously apply the poise damage. And because of that, like since you are breaking the postures of everything without like much of an effort together, the game is absurdly easy.
And there are even some gankers that will create YouTube channels dedicated to humiliate invaders, regardless of their skill level. Yeah, I don't think these are well-adjusted individuals, if you ask me.
Okay, dude, this is actually so funny. So, like, there is that guy that actually made multiple videos on me, on G9, and many others. Like, you know, someone might not like Napstar. Yeah, you see Napstar over here, sure. But Lost is practically loved by everyone. Like, he's super chill dude. And you know why, like, the gamer actually exposed him in the videos and started shitting on him in that videos of his? It's because Lost trolled him in Dark Souls 3 with Fighter PL. That ganker took it very personally, that someone dared to, I don't know, like throw him off the fucking ledge with force. And because of that, now the gamer dedicated 2 videos where he is insulting a streamer. Yeah, that's reasonable. Yeah.
If you allow me to use my conspiracy hat at this very moment, I would say that FromSoft are lowering the quality of invasions, so when the day comes that they finally get rid of them in a new installment, like Night Rain for example, not as many people will complain about it, so the voice of those who still support invasions won't be as loud. And we're gonna enter an era of Souls games with no invasions, and that's gonna be funny. They won't be Souls games, but hey, what can you do? It's funny how the motto of Souls...
What was written here? To clarify, Souls games have always been PVE, VP. I actually, dude, I need to find it. I need to find it for you. Give me a second. So this is a Reddit post from like 2 years ago, yeah? And multiplayer actually got an award on that year, like of BAFTA, whatever it is, like some equivalent of like Game Awards show, I assume. And actually, Elden Ring won the reward for the best multiplayer of 2022. What? Claw is screaming from the fucking sidelines. On that list, you had like a...
Yeah, but it's BAFTA. They're experts in movies, not games. They probably took it from the artistic perspective or the uniqueness of it.
That's interesting. Look at competition here. You have actually dedicated multiplayer games like Call of Duty. You have Overwatch 2, and Elden Ring actually won.
Yeah, they know nothing about video games.
Aha. Okay. So so that's why they won, according to you. Okay, I see. Well, not my point exactly why Elden Ring like won or didn't win like a multiplayer award. I don't care about that, frankly. What I care is reaction of people. As for example, you have like a guy here that got like 1.4k upvotes that says that Elden Ring is not on my list of the multiplayer games, yeah? Or like you have another some dude with way less upvotes saying, but we have here like the guy saying why multiplayer in this game sucks, or there's a guy that says that Elden Ring is a multiplayer question mark. I know it has some small multiplayer features, but not enough to call it a multiplayer game. And that's honestly a problem, because this is actually true that this game, like overall Souls games, you have like a shit tons of ignorant people that just ignore these multiplayer elements of the game and just call like freaking Souls games overall as a single player experience. And honestly, it's just kind of baffling, because these games are basically a fusion between like both multiplayer, single player, and even if you are playing practically exclusively single player, you are still utilizing so many elements of multiplayer. Like for example, let's say in Dark Souls 1, on the ground you have a white circles, yeah? And people are asking, what is that, yeah? They are curious. What the hell are these white circles? And you know what they are? Those are places where someone in other worlds, in their worlds, used a miracle. And when you have this thing on the ground, you can see that on the miracle of the guy that just like sees this ring, yeah? There is like a circle. It essentially boosts your miracle in your world when someone used a miracle in their world. Like, these games have these multiplayer elements everywhere around, and this is basically something that even a PvE gamer that is not bothered with co-op or PvP at all still going to use to some extent, like, you know, messages on the ground for one, or like the blood stains. You got the point, yeah?
I disagree. You can play this entire game offline.
Oh yes, you absolutely can. Point being is that if you are not interacting with any multiplayer elements, you still, like, technically, if you think you are not interacting, in fact actually still can interact with them. Bro, like, speaking of Dark Souls 1, yeah, like in Dark Souls 1 you have freaking vagrants, yeah? The red version and the white version of the vagrants. And these little boys, these little dudes here, they are essentially actively existing because of your choices in your world. Like, if you dropped an item on the ground, maybe if you died in the like certain location too many times, these little guys are going to spawn because of the fact that you did something in your world. You didn't actively interact with other players in the multiplayer, yeah? But your choices or how you play the game still matters for the experience of the another player. The multiplayer components of the game, you might ignore them. You can even play the game completely alone, disconnect yourself from any multiplayer whatsoever. But you are not going to play the full experience that is the Souls game. Because at the full experience, Souls games have these multiplayer mechanics as initial part of your overall Souls experience. It's just that, like, in Elden Ring, in comparison to another game, these multiplayer elements are the weakest. But here, like, Souls games, like, to clarify, Souls games have always been PvE PvP. I maybe wouldn't call them PvE PvP, but I would say that Souls games have always been somewhat of multiplayer games, if you wanted to just experience the game to the fullest.
It's funny how the motto of Souls games has always been get good for a long time. Like, if you're struggling with the game, you just need to try again, get good, and face up to it, which...
I just want to point out that Elden Ring doesn't have this motto anymore, yeah? When you are going to look up promotional materials, let me see. In that brief over here, you have like information, what is Elden Ring, the genre-defining gameplay, create your character in From Software's refined action RPG, and define your playstyle by experimenting with a wide variety of weapons, magical abilities, and skills found throughout the world. Charge into battle, pick off enemies one by one using stealth, or even call upon allies for aid. Many options are at your disposal as you decide how to approach exploration and combat. Okay, do you see something here in particular? A lack of something, to be exact. There is zero information about hard difficulty of the game. You know, Souls games had its difficulty as like the main aspect of the games. Like every single Souls game was announced like another fucking hard and demanding action RPG by From Software. Elden Ring is not promoted like that. Elden Ring is not promoted as a hard game. It's still From Software's production, the way how they are making the games, just by default makes it like demanding. But Elden Ring on its own is actually not a game that tells you, well, you're supposed to actually be good. It's not the game that suggests you're supposed to overcome the challenges by getting better at the game, unfortunately. Elden Ring franchise is that casual franchise, is that accessible to everyone franchise. And a lot of, let's call it like, for lack of better word, veterans that played Souls games might find Elden Ring bafflingly like stupid to some extent when it comes to its design, but it's very often like comes into play because of the fact that this game actually not supposed to be as challenging as Souls games. Funnily enough, when you are going to not use like Ashes of War and you're just gonna try to play the game like it would be a Souls game, Elden Ring is the most challenging Souls game anyway. It's just that, like, you know, the moment you are going to start using shield pokes, like endures, blood taxes, or another stuff that is very good in the PvE, then like PvE get trivialized.
Which is sorta what the developers intended since the release of Dark Souls. But when it comes to invasions, the discourse of the majority is not to get good. It's simply to get rid of them. It's like the moment a human factor is introduced into the mix, everyone suddenly gets offended. People talk about how invasions ruin their experience with Elden Ring, when in reality, invasions are a part of Elden Ring. It's not that you are playing Elden Ring and some random goober entered your world with some third-party software. It's actually part of the whole package of the game. You are supposed to get invaded if you choose to do co-op. I think this antagonization of invaders and the portraying of invasions as an alien feature to the game is what eventually caused FromSoft to dilute them into a softer experience more and more with each game. And I find it really sad that the constant whining of some skill-impaired goobers who can't beat one player as a team of 2 or 3 has turned what could be a unique multiplayer experience with tons of death into a bastardized mockery of itself that's only there because of tradition. It won't matter how much FromSoft changes them to fit the crybaby needs of the casual player who plays the game for 1 month and never touches it again. It will never be enough for these people, because they don't really like Souls games. They just like co-op experiences. And this just ain't it. Listen, I know I'm making a ton of assumptions here, but they are based on observations I made on the community throughout the years. Balancing the game mode that brings longevity to the game after you have done everything in PvE around the people who only play Elden Ring once and never touch it again will never be a good idea. And I cannot even begin to tell you how demoralizing and indignant it can be when you are defeated by 3 people who barely know what they are doing. Players that will instantly crumble the moment they have to fight by themselves. It doesn't matter if we gave you the key to their house. You are still ill and deserve every disadvantage possible, so little Timmy won't feel bad about not knowing how to properly play the game. And trust me, I know that it sounds a bit unhinged and maybe rude. But I would be lying if I told you that it's not hurtful, to be honest. It's a bit ironic that in a genre where skill and hard work is supposed to be rewarded, the player that is considered by the game as the most skillful, in this case the Invader, is reduced to nothing more than a mere inconvenience that needs to be taken care of. Remember, invasions run on the assumption that the invaded player is the one that has less skill, while the Invader is supposed to be the one that has more skill. So the developers decided to nerf you just to keep Timmy immersed in his power fantasy. And if this is how it's going to be from now on, honestly, just fucking get rid of invasions. They will be missed, but I'd rather them die now instead of having a future installment where every time you try to invade, a hand comes out of the fucking computer and just crushes your balls or something. Lo que poronga sea.
Honestly, I think I disagree with the last sentiment. Actually, if invasions would be incredibly hard to win, that it would actually require immense amount of skill and probably like not even skill, but mostly just luck and patience and so on. It could be potentially like even more interesting than what we currently have. Like currently invasions might end up, no matter how good of an invader you are, in split of the second, if you are going to just like, I don't know, like make like a one misstep, yeah, you're gonna get blended and killed in split of the second. That's what can happen. Like you had like many examples in my videos where that was happening, like, and it happens to everyone, no matter how good you are. That being said, in Elden Ring, you still can turn around and absolutely demolish potential like a group of the hosts, like with one proper like wave of darkness if you're lucky enough, yeah? If that wouldn't be possible and Invader really would have it insanely hard, it could be potentially like very painful experience. But for people like me that sometimes like, you know, fights like the same gang squad for like 2 days or trying to engage in helpless situations, like for example, we have like videos here on the channel where I fight a cheater. I like engaging into like what initially looks like impossible odds. So for me, for one, if invasions in another Souls entry would be even more brutal to what we have in Elden Ring, honestly, I probably would find joy in that to some extent.